Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Magpie Tales, episode number 3. And you can see we're joined by Assistant Manager Olly Willis. Olly, thank you very much for joining us.
No
I'll
worries.
apologise at the start to our viewers for us being a little bit late. You can blame our technical team in the background. Certainly not an attendance issue on our part, so I'll stick up for us straight off the bat. But thanks for joining us. How are you? How are you finding things at the moment? How are you generally?
Yeah, I'm good. Obviously, just about got used to lockdown life. Looking forward to getting back to normal. But yeah, obviously, which is why we're talking tonight. Missed the football big time, and can't wait to obviously get that going again as soon as we possibly can. But no, we've dealt with it okay. It was nice to have a period of rest because actually, the worst bit of it all was earlier in the season when we were kind of stop-start, and every game you went into, there was a discussion about, will we be here next week? And actually, that was the most difficult part of all. So for it being stopped, and we knew it was stopped for a period of time, it gave us an opportunity to obviously relax a little bit and take a break. And more recently, we've started to think about it again, and obviously with the plans to get going again as soon as we get the go ahead.
Yeah, it's certainly good, and excuse me, we'll be speaking about that. Of course, we'll be speaking about your footballing journey at Dereham and elsewhere as well. It's really good to have you with us, and thank you for giving up your time. I know you're a
No
very
problem.
busy man. Of course, any questions for Olly, then do get them in the comments down below. And we've got Ben on standby who's going to send them over to me, so I will ask Olly them at some point. We'll get to them, so get them down below. First and foremost, Olly, of course, beyond football, you're also a teacher. So I expect you've been very busy. We, of course, I think since we recorded this one, I don't know the exact crossover with Gus's interview, but I think we might just have had the roadmap, or we didn't have the roadmap out, and things weren't as clear perhaps as they are tonight. So is it nice for you both as a teacher and obviously someone involved in football that there's now some clarity about the way forward?
Most definitely, yeah. It's been really tough. Obviously, with school, we had a period of complete closure, but then the expectation on this lockdown this time is that students continue to be educated, and we've been running live lessons throughout the whole period. So, kind of managing the whole live lessons because my wife's a teacher as well, so we've been both doing that as well as having our 3 children at home to homeschool. Has been a real challenge, and yeah, it was the change of routine, the change of structure, which is obviously was difficult to start off with, but like anything else, you kind of get used to it and you get through it. But definitely, we definitely have a glass of wine this weekend with the kids ready to go back on Monday morning and us to return to school. With it, obviously, going back to school isn't going back to complete normality. You know, in the next 2 weeks, we've got to test about 1,400 students 3 times in the space of 2 weeks. So it's going to be busier than ever before, but at least it'll be great to see everyone back in school and getting back to that normal kind of daily routine.
Yeah, and we know how important education is, so it is important that they're back and obviously have school life. It's going to be a massive operational challenge. My sister works in a school as well, so I know firsthand the challenges that you guys are facing. For you personally, I know you said you've not enjoyed homeschooling, but I guess going back to school is maybe that on a bigger extent, or is it slightly different?
It's managing so many different things, which was a challenging bit. I've enjoyed it because it's meant that I've had an extra day at home with my kids. So in terms of family time, I've got to spend, on Monday at home homeschooling my children, which I'll never get the opportunity to do again. I wouldn't have thought. And obviously weekends I've had time to spend with a family as well, which has been really nice. As part of my job, I've been in 4 days a week, and Beck, bless her, has been managing the homeschooling for the rest of the week and doing a grand job. But we've been spreading it out for a full day really and having breaks. But yeah, I'm looking forward to them going back because it's important for them to be in that routine. For mental well-being socially, it's just so important that them kids are back in school, and it's the right decision. And we'll do, obviously there's loads what we need to do to keep everyone safe, but for my part it's the right thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice sight to see them all go back, and hopefully this is it now, and they will be back permanently. That's certainly what we all hope for. Of course, we had
Yeah.
we had Gus on last time, and we spoke to him about his footballing journey, his life at Dereham. We want to do exactly the same with you, but beforehand, of course, we've got to speak about the current situation. How are you finding? I know you said it's been quite nice to have a little bit of a break, but how are you finding this sort of period without football? Because you guys had that weird experience of kicking off a season and then
Yeah.
it just sort of falling away completely, and there's
Yeah.
been no sign of that. But I guess the positive and the light at the end of the tunnel is the fact you've got that start date to aim for.
Definitely, and like I said a little while ago, the most difficult bit was that stage where we were still playing. We were trying to keep everyone going. We were still training on a Tuesday night. We were still having games, but every game you played, you knew it could be your last one for a period of time again. And then we had a period where it stopped, and there was talk about us coming back. And that was managing that bit was the most difficult of all, because actually to motivate players during that period of time, when actually everyone's safety and health was more important than football, was really challenging, and it wasn't enjoyable. And I'll come on to it. You know, we do what we do, and I talk on behalf of myself and the management team, and probably most of the players as well. We do it for the football. We love the football, but it's also what goes alongside that. It's having a banter, being in the change room together, enjoying each other's company, being on the bus and having a laugh after the game, win, lose or draw, having a beer in the clubhouse. And once that bit was taken away, yeah, the whole experience wasn't the same. It became more difficult, and yeah, it was definitely the right decision to call it at that point. But I definitely wasn't interested in then getting going again in a few weeks' time. It just wasn't the right thing. And having that break, having that period of rest, has been good. And more recently, me and Gus have got back on it, and we're talking a lot again and planning for the new season, which is so exciting. And I know nothing's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, but even if the Senior Cup and the local league didn't happen, planning for a pre-season and the start of a season and a season that wasn't going to be disrupted is exciting. And I think everyone has appreciated just how important football is to everyone. And I talk on behalf of us players, but also fans and volunteers involved in the club. I think moving forward, everyone's going to really appreciate that even more than they ever have done before.
Yeah, getting games back, getting crowds back at Aldis Park is going to be something quite special, I suspect.
That'll be amazing,
in the weeks and months to come. You mentioned the planning there. Obviously, we had Gus on last time, which you can watch on our YouTube channel if somehow you've missed that. It's a good chat,
watch.
so well worth checking out. But he spoke about planning and for next season, and more specifically about recruitment. How is this time giving you a little bit more time to prepare for next season and to try and make sure the plans you've got in place are absolutely solid and absolutely correct to progress the football club? Because I mean, like we spoke about last week, really you've only had one full season in charge of the club, which, considering you've been since 2019, it's quite a strange thought, really.
It really is. And it's all about progression with the club. And it has given us time to reflect and think about how we're going to move forward. Obviously, the focus during lockdown hasn't been on maybe necessarily on the pitch and what we're going to do in terms of playing staff for next year, but it's been on the club, and what Ash and obviously the team have done there has been absolutely extraordinary. And we're in a great position moving forward. So that was the focus. But more recently, me and Gus have started to think about next season and how we're going to continue to progress and improve. And thinking about what we might need to bring into the football club, retaining obviously what we've already got. We've been speaking to the boys over the last couple of weeks, and Dereham fans will be pleased to hear that. It's amazing, really, and it speaks volumes for us as a club. Them boys are want to stay with Dereham Town, and they're here for the right reasons, and that's really important. And then we know that to improve, we probably need to bring in a couple. We know that. From everyone who comes and watches us week in and week out, 1 week we're unbelievable and we can beat any team in the league, and the next we underperform and don't get the result that we should have got. So it's all about building that consistency, I think, moving forward. And that doesn't just come from ability of the players on the pitch. It comes from players' desire, experience and know-how to move us to that next level where we can go away from home and don't necessarily play our expansive football, but still pick up results which will benefit us obviously across the season, because there's no point us winning 3 and then losing 3, which has been kind of the experiences we've had over the last couple of years. But moving forward, that needs to be the focus, and that belief that we can continue to improve. And as Gus said last week, the aim for us is always how close can we get to in playoffs? Can we sneak into the playoffs? Because the club have never been there, and we strongly believe that we're capable of doing it. We've got an outstanding team, some really quality players, that would walk into any team in our league. We know that, but it is about building that consistency and winning when we're not at our best in order to be successful.
It was interesting to hear Gus speak about, and we kind of spoke about the philosophical side, if you want to talk about it and refer to it like that, in terms of the long-term picture and the long-term plan that you guys have got. How difficult is it as a coach, as part of a management structure, when, of course, the full focus has to be on the next game, and it's constantly about the short term, and obviously results, particularly is what supporters look at, but equally to plan in the long term as well, to have that sort of view to the bigger picture and be sort of 2 years, 3 years down the line. It must be an incredibly difficult balance to strike.
It is, and the way Dereham Town are run, we need people to be patient, because we're not a club that are going to go and spend a load of money to bring players in who are going to just spend a season with us to try and get us promoted. That's not our structure, and that's not our system. So we do need patience, and it's about bringing the right characters, the right players into the football club, and players who want to join Dereham for the right reasons. We're not a club, as everyone knows, who will go and throw the cash about to get someone. They need to be joining because they want to play for me and Gus. They want to play for the football club, and they want to do their utmost to be successful. And in any level of football, you have to be really careful. We've seen some horror stories in elite level football where people get signed a reputation and it just doesn't work. They're not there for the right reasons. And me and Gus are very much about, bringing through the youth at the right times. But people need to understand, to be successful in the league we're in, them boys need a couple of seasons to embed themselves and become first team regulars before we're going to really start seeing the best of them. And that experience, I go back to it, that experience is absolutely key. And I sometimes wonder if we miss that a little bit, and we're looking to obviously move forward with that for next season.
It's interesting what you say there about patience and youth, and this is, for me at least, maybe what puts Dereham apart to other non-league clubs. And we could throw 6 or 7 names in here, and people will know which clubs we're referring to when we say they chase the dream, they pump loads of money in, and it doesn't always yield the results that perhaps some would hope.
No.
It can fall apart very quickly. It's not particularly a sustainable way of running a football club. Given Dereham's position, both in terms of in competition, but equally in community, it's really important to have that association and that humility, I guess, and that connection to the local area that the club has established.
Oh, massively. And, we need a football club, if it's me and Gus are here or we're not here, but Dereham Town Football Club needs to be successful in 10, 20 years' time. And they've got the right man in place now at the top with Ash, who totally gets that. And he has a similar mindset to myself and Gus, in that we're not going to rush things, we're going to get it right. And it's about the long-term future of Dereham. And in 5 years' time, whether that be the next level and another 5 years, but we push on to the next level again, that's the plan. But it's definitely not one of these clubs that we're going to say, right, next season we have to get promoted, and we're going to do this by throwing loads of money at it. And if we don't get there for the next 3 seasons, it might mean that our budget gets cut to, near nothing, and that might mean we go back into the furlough none. That's not the structure and the place we see Dereham Town at. And yeah, it's a progressive journey, and one that will take a while to get there, I think.
I asked Gus this question last week, but interested to hear your thoughts as well. How nice is it, given everything that's been going on and watching, I'd say, the crisis that some clubs are having at the moment in terms of financially, all the way up to National League level, we're seeing now, certainly with a couple of clubs who are having to furlough players and don't know what their future holds beyond the next game or so. How nice is it, even though the league isn't continuing, that when that date does come, as my earphone falls out, when that date does come, that football starts again, that there is going to be a club to go back to. You are going to have a decent group of players, and the values aren't going to have been changed or smashed along the way.
No, it's so important. And Ash has been absolutely fantastic for the football club during this period of time, and I know he works closely with Ben as well on this side. But yeah, it means that we can continue our journey without having to take a backward step, which is so important for everyone involved in the football club. And I do go back to it. You know, we've got some outstanding players, and had we not managed this situation properly, like we have, it might mean that we could have lost some of them players because we couldn't financially commit to them boys for the next couple of seasons, and that means them boys would have gone and joined another local team. And you know what local football's like. Once you settle in somewhere, it can be tough to then get them back. So yeah, Ash has done an absolutely amazing job, and as ever, he's very forward thinking and thinking ahead. And he was kind of first to it, and he just gets on with it. You know, he doesn't trouble us on that front. He doesn't put extra pressure on us, which has been amazing. Yeah, so we're obviously very grateful for that.
We'll come back to Dereham a little bit later on. Let's talk a little bit about you then and your football career. It started like with Gus at Norwich City. Talk to us a little bit about the process of being scouted and getting offered a place in the academy, because it's obviously something that a lot of young children, young kids, I'm sure you see it in your day-to-day job, dream still of being a professional footballer. So talk to us a little bit about that process and how it came about.
So I was obviously a keen footballer from a very early age, and I think it was, I think I was 8 years old at the time, and I was playing for Hempnell under 10s when I first got spotted. So I was playing up 2 years ago, just for my local club, with some of my mates, and I got spotted. It was by Colin Watts at the time, and I think the academy then, I think he must have thought I was absolutely diddy to be a 10-year-old, but he thought I was under 10 at the time. But I was actually obviously an under 8, and the academy started at that point under 8s. And I think it was called Centre of Excellence at that point, actually. But yeah, I got scouted by Colin and invited to a trial at the football club. And that was kind of the first trial that everyone went to. So there wasn't a team in place that I then joined. It was started from under 8. So I got invited at the start of the programme for the academy. And I went to the trial. I remember it quite well. And performed well, and kind of then and there I got offered a 2-year contract with the academy, which obviously I accepted. And at that point, I think we had the odd game then and then. It wasn't like a commitment that you have a game every Saturday or Sunday at that point. So yeah, I signed a 2-year contract, and then I think it was a year in, or a couple of years into my contract, the academy then changed its status. So you're still linked to the academy, but you then, like Gussie said last week, I think you went and played for your local team again. And that's quite funny, because obviously I'd then been in the academy for 2 years and built some friendships, and we'd had a group of players who'd played and we'd competed against other clubs around England. And obviously we were quite successful with some great players and names that some people obviously know, the likes of Stephen Shipley, who had a great local kind of career with Norwich United. Gary Etherington back then was a fantastic player. Ryan Jarvis, Danny Crowe, some real well-known names who are still playing locally today. But we, I remember us all having a chat, and our parents were all friends as well, because obviously we were traveling all around the country to play games, and they got friendly. And they were like, what do we do now? You know, the academy said you stand on the books with us, but go and get some experience playing, go and play for your local club again. And I was like, I said to my dad, I don't fancy going back to Hempnell. It wasn't the one at the time. And I had a few, obviously local clubs caught on to this was happening. So we had a lot of different offers, and we were contacting one another, where are you going to go? And I know I played for Lakeford for a little while as well, and I had connections there. And I was like, I think I'm going to go to Lakeford. And a couple of them said, I think I'm going to go to Catton. I was like, oh, no way, I don't want to play against you, and we don't want to be rivals anyway. So Stephen Shipley's dad, Andrew Shipley, who was a big Norwich fan as well, he was like, I know, why don't we just set up our own local team and get all the players playing together again? So we all signed for Loddon Grasshoppers, which Andrew was manager of. He agreed to be manager, and we all played for Loddon. And I think we went on. I don't think we lost a game of football then, as you would expect, because we're based in the academy team playing for Loddon. And that ran over a couple of summers as well. So we entered all the five-a-side competitions. Yeah, it was a great crack, and actually it was brilliant for us because it meant we all stayed together. We were all playing together and enjoying local football. And at that point, then I think it was something that I imagine it was under 11s, under 12s. We then went back to the academy and got another contract, which led me up to the age of 16 when I left school and got offered my scholarship.
Well, I was going to ask you about your scholarship, but just on what you're speaking about there, was it quite difficult to process as a fairly young kid at that point, being in an academy for 2 years and then not dropping out of it, but it changing and the role within that changing? Was that quite difficult for you to grasp?
Do you know what? When you're young, I don't think you fully appreciate it, to be honest. You just love playing football, and you don't think too much about kind of the level that you're playing. And to this day, I believe that you're better off playing local football and playing regularly than maybe having that pressure of being in an academy and playing less regularly and not being able to play for your local club and playing with your friends. I'm not saying if my son got to age 8 and Norwich said here's a contract, I'm not saying he wouldn't play, but I look back on that experience and think actually that done me, that was done me a world of good playing local football and creating friendships and playing different teams, with then going into the academy again and taking it all more seriously, because there's a massive commitment, don't forget, with it as well. Traveling around, you're at school all week, even at that age, and then you're traveling to London or wherever it be on a Sunday, it takes up your full day and you're left for about one day. And that one day is when a lot of the time your mates get together, and when you're at school, your house parties and everything else, they took place on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And it meant you couldn't do that. You have to give up a lot to be even at that age in an academy. And it's, you can't forget that. To answer your question, in terms of then kind of a scholarship stage, I remember this bit really clearly. And it's funny, in football, they say you need to find someone who who just likes you and takes to you and wants you to do well, because everyone has different views on people's performances and their attributes and their mental capacity and qualities. And I remember it so clearly that I got Dougie Evans. I don't know if you remember Dougie Evans. Dougie Evans was my coach, I think under 14, under 15. And I was doing well. And, I always felt like I was on track to be in the top 3 or 4 in my age group who might then be offered a scholarship at the end of that contract when you get to under 16s. But I remember then, and again, I'm not having to go at this person, but Jeremy Goss then took over under 15. I remember it was a change and we got Jeremy Goss, and he was a fantastic coach, obviously been there, done it. But for some reason, I didn't perform as well under him, and actually someone took over me at right back, and I found that quite difficult because I'd always been, that first choice right back in the academy, or right midfield. And then suddenly Jeremy Goss came in, new coach, and favoured someone else in my position. And I found that was the bit I found most difficult, because even in school, you're quite proud of what you do. And suddenly it gave me a bit of a kick in the teeth where I was thinking, oh, hang on a minute. I'd almost set my sights on, I finished school, I was going to go and do the scholarship because I always felt like I was capable of doing that. And then suddenly I wasn't first choice, and I started questioning whether it was going to be my time. But then it was so then I was in my last year, and I was at the same point. I was so in year 11 at school, so under 16, and that's when you start getting offered your scholarships. I remember thinking, you know what, I don't think I'm going to get there. And it made me and my parents started thinking what else I could do. I started looking at A levels, colleges, and following that route a little bit more. And I remember it was at Colney one day, and Adi Bothroyd had just been employed by the club as under 18 manager, who's, by the way, was an absolutely outstanding coach, and I'm not surprised he's gone on with the career he's had. But I remember him coming and watching a game at Colney, just to see. He used to wander around and see what was coming through, and I was on that game, and I had a good game, and I remember him pulling me to one side after, and he said, "Yeah, I was really impressed," and it gave me that kind of that buzz back and that belief back. Which then led to him coming and watching a little bit more regularly, which was great because he was looking at who he wanted in his part of his squad for the following year on the scholarship. And I remember everyone kind of being like, "Oh no, we really need to start playing now and performing." And I remember again, he then came to a game a couple of weeks later, and I was on the bench again because Goss had gone for the other lad in front of me. And he came up to me, Bothroyd, and said, "Are you just being rested? Why are you not playing?" And I said, "Oh, not sure." And obviously a conversation, as it happens in football clubs, had then taken place during that week. And I got invited to come up and train with the under 18s. Missed school, missed a couple of days of school, and I went and trained with the under 18s and trained really well. And he'd just taken a liking to me. And I knew from that day that I was going to be all right again. And he got me, you probably know the facts, I started playing under 18 football when I was still an under 16, and he got me in there, and yeah, I just became more confident, and my ability improved under him, and yeah, and that change, that one person meant that actually I would have probably been released at 16, but instead I got a contract, and then had great opportunity to obviously progress from there.
I know exactly what you mean. Obviously, I didn't play to your standard, but I know what you mean in terms of having a coach that likes you and sees maybe the stuff that you don't see in yourself sometimes, and that's useful. But just to rewind a little bit, and you spoke about being dipped out the side and someone else being preferred in your position. I think people perhaps who aren't around football or haven't been in the academy or don't know anyone that has been in the academy, I think there's often this picture painted, maybe not towards the end of academies, but certainly at the early stages, that it's quite a pleasant place to be. But was your eyes open maybe to the ruthlessness of football at that early age when you were dropped out and then back in again? Did you kind of see that from that early age?
100%. It is ruthless. Yeah, there's so much change within football clubs all the time, and they are looking for players that they're going to bring through the system to either play in their first team or to sell on for decent money and financially benefit the football club. And that now, even back when I played, that was always the case, but it's more so than ever now. As part of my job as a teacher at my school, we have a link with the academy and with the football club. And they're now, because they're Cat 1 status, they're bringing players in from all over the country at under 14. So they're in year 9 at school, and they're now leaving their families to come and be with host families in the local area and play for the academy. And they're investing massively in them players. But it doesn't mean to say just because they're coming and join the football club at under 14, it doesn't mean to say that by under 16, they're not fancied, and they go back and they have to find another football club. And I know Gus touched on it last week. You need that attitude and mindset in football to be successful. I know you might touch on it. The likes of Hanno and Fraser, they obviously had that mindset as well. I don't think I necessarily had it. I wasn't prepared to go and try and really fight for my career in football, which has obviously led me onto the career that I now have and my involvement with Dereham.
Yeah, just to touch upon your youth career a little bit more, I've got in front of me that you missed a penalty in a shootout against Wickham in an FA Youth Cup. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? If it doesn't hurt
I
you
don't
too
want
much.
to, no, but I will. I was for the under 18s, and I think I was 16. I was at school. I remember it clearly because I went to school the following day after I got back from Wickham late that night and was fairly depressed the following morning. But yeah, we played Wickham away, and I don't know if I started the game. I think I might have come on, and yeah, I was penalty taker number 7, and I regret the moment. AD Bofford was a manager, and I remember him getting in the huddle and saying, he fancies one. And he'd done the first 5, and then he looked around, and at the time I just said, yeah, I fancy one. I don't know why I said it, but yeah, I was praying that it didn't get to that number, obviously, and I'd kind of said to him, yeah, I fancy it. Being the good books, but hoping it didn't get to me anyway. I kept scoring it. Yeah, it got to me. And yeah, I hit the upright, and it came down. I think on the line, and somehow it didn't go in. I was praying for the line technology. It might have saved my day, but no, it wasn't to be. But yeah, again, no regrets really, because it showed that I had that determination and the confidence to do it.
And it's all about how you bounce back. And I suppose and you'll know as a coach now, when a young player puts their hand up and maybe shows that initiative to go and do something that maybe, you were a defender, so I would imagine taking a penalty wasn't something that maybe came as naturally to you as others. That no. Just you putting your hand up maybe would have been seen as a positive sign.
Yeah,
by
I would have preferred to win the penalty, I think, rather than take it. That's what I was better at.
Well, to be fair, I've got here that you also put in a man of the match performance against Ipswich, which means we will have to let you off that penalty, right?
Well, yeah, that one was one of my first games under 80. So when I was still playing under Jeremy Goss, and I wasn't sure if I was coming or going. AD then got me in training. One of my first games was at home to Ipswich, and Darren Bent played left wing, and I played right back, and I had a cracking game, and it kind of set me up, to be honest. And yeah, I can't remember. I was definitely still at school at that point as well.
Was there a moment during your scholarship, obviously before you were released, that maybe you thought, I've got a chance here, I could go through and break through, or were you always quite
Yeah.
realistic? Because I think there are some people that get sort of swept away with the dream, don't they, of becoming a professional footballer. Gus came on last week and said he was always fairly realistic, maybe about his future. Were you the same, or did you get swept away?
I was always realistic, and I was lucky that my parents were always massively supportive as well. And as part of my deal with the football club, I always had education as a backup. It was always built into my contract with them, which has obviously helped me long term. But in terms of my aspirations and belief that I could become a professional footballer, possibly the first year, so it was under 80, and I had a good first year, and I got player of the season in my first year as a scholar. And that following pre-season, I had a few friendlies with the first team and played well. But then from that point onwards, probably not. I didn't quite progress in my second year as I would have hoped. And like Gus said last week, by the time you get to your third year, you have a good idea whether you're going to be kept on or not. And I think we knew by that point I probably wouldn't be, and that's why I then started looking at my next steps and where I'd go from there.
We'll come on to Gus in a moment and how you met him, but since I read him a nice quote about him, I think from Ricky Martin last week, I'll read one about you from Sammy Morgan, who said, Ollie may be small in stature, but he's got a big heart and he's a tremendous competitor. Is that something that you agree with?
Yeah, I think so. I've always been physically smaller than a lot of my opponents and players that I was playing with and against. So I think so, yeah. But I've always been a competitive person. I don't like losing, and I think that was evident in my career to date. And that obviously stood me in good stead. And Stanley was a great guy and recognised that, which was nice.
Absolutely. Let's come on to your, I don't know if we want to call it a love story. You might want to call it a love story, but that start with Gus and meeting him. Presumably that was at Norwich. Talk to us a little bit about how you two got friendly. I know there's a nice story you want to tell as well about Gus.
I was in Norwich, all the bookies. I can't remember which one I met him in. I think it was Norwich. But yeah, I met Gus. Obviously through Norwich. I think I knew Gus locally through local football before that, but yeah, I got to know Gus well when he became a scholar. So I was a second year when he then got taken on as a scholar. And we just clicked. We took the mick out of one another regularly, and yeah, we were good friends. We had a lot of similar interests as one another, and yeah, we were good friends, and we knew from that point on we'd probably like to continue that into local football, which we've obviously done. But yeah, my story about Gus, and this will make a few people laugh. Gus, as a lot of people will know, he's kind of renowned for his horrendous garms and his dress sense, which we tried to help him with, throughout, but he never quite got there. He preferred to spend his money on other things. But I remember one day, and we all had a chat, and we said, let's. There was one other lad who Gus was friends with, Lee Howlett, who had funny dress sense as well. And we said, we're in the change room, boys. Let's tell Gus, let's tell everyone we're going to dress up as Howlett, tomorrow. So he thinks we're going to dress up as Howlett, and it'll be a good laugh when he comes in. But actually, we'll all dress up as Gus, in these horrendous, big, baggy, flared jeans, a shirt which is like undone so you could see his horrendous chest hair, and a big, blingy watch, big diamond earrings, a haircut like Ricky Martin, like we said earlier. Anyway, we got Gus in, and we said, Gus, what about this? Let's all dress up as Howlett. And Howlett, he liked his bling as well. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. Anyway, so Gus went off, and the next morning we all got in early. We texted each other getting early, and we all dressed as Gus and done our hair like Gus. And yeah, he got absolutely abused. And I thought that would be the moment where his dress sense would improve. But yeah, we're working on it. It's like the football club, it's steady improvement. And, in a few years' time, we might see that. Well, I hope we see it.
Yeah, it's about the long term, isn't it?
Of course it is. He's married, and he's done really well getting married to Zoe, and he's obviously got a child on the way, so he's doing something right. But he's still got a lot to work on.
Any thoughts on the blonde highlights?
The blonde highlights back in the day. Well, I can't give him too much grief about his hair, because at least he's got a lot of hair. But yeah, the blonde highlights. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he was thinking, to be honest. But he goes with it.
Do you know what? When I first saw that picture, I thought he's not really someone that screams highlights when you first meet him, but which I think makes it probably a little bit funnier.
I wonder if actually, he was getting bullied at the football club, and maybe they tied him up and coloured his hair. That's probably more likely.
Just finally, before we move on from Norwich and speak about your release a little bit, Gus told a nice story last week about training with the first team and his difficulty of defending against Darren Huckabee. Have you got any similar stories? Did you ever get to train against?
Yeah, we done exactly the same. You know, I can relate to that when Gus was talking about it last week. And that, yeah, they used to do a phase play on the Friday before the Saturday, and yeah, I used to come up against Hucks as well. And the best one was when I used to have to mark Crouchy, who was there at the time as well. And marking him as a deep cross came in at the far post was interesting. But kind of, it was a great experience. And I always say I'd never change it for a world. And them conversations and relationships and friendships that you created during that journey, you know, were amazing. And I remember a couple to share with you. I remember, and it kind of led on to his career, actually. I remember Bentley, when he came on loan at Norwich, and he was young at that point. And I remember he was in the gym, and he was a really nice lad, actually, and had so much ability. He was absolutely class. But he openly admitted that he didn't enjoy football. You know, he was in football because he was good at football, but he didn't enjoy football. And that actually led on to, I think he retired a few years ago now. But yeah, you know, people kind of think that just because you're good at football and you're in a Premiership club, you know, it's a dream job. But he openly said, yeah, it wasn't for him, and he didn't enjoy it, and he was doing it to try and progress and see if it got better. But obviously, got to a point in his career where he decided it wasn't for him, which is really interesting. And when we go back, I'll just touch on kind of a mindset thing as well, and the importance of having that mindset if you're going to be successful in football. I remember so clearly, and he's still playing now for Salford. It's Ian Henderson. And I remember on a couple of my first training sessions with the first team, I got taken up with the first team a few times under Nigel Worthington. And I remember Hendo, you know, I went up there, I lacked confidence, I lacked real belief. And, you know, I was a bit of a yes man, really, in that if one of the older pros told me to do something, I'd do it. Whereas I remember Hendo, in one of the first sessions, he was a year above me. And I remember Fleming getting the ball, Craig Fleming, and Hendo just flew through him. A horrendous tackle. You know, Flem got up and kind of treated Hendo like he would any of the youth boys, in like, what on earth are you doing? And Hendo went up against him. And from that day, I went away and thought, you know what, I would have never done that. But that is why you'll probably be successful in football, because you're out for yourself and you're looking after yourself, and you've got that real belief that no one's going to stop me from doing it. And he's gone on, you know, and he was technically good, Hendo. He was a good footballer, but he wasn't as gifted as the others I played with. And he's gone on to have a really successful career as a result of that. And I personally, I feel that's kind of a natural ability that you've either got or you haven't. It's hard to kind of teach someone to have that personality. And that's why that mindset is really important. And unfortunately for us, I think players who play in London areas, they get taught that mentality better than local football players round in Norfolk and Suffolk do. And I don't know why that is, but it does feel that way sometimes.
Yeah, I can understand, I think, where David Bentley's coming from, and just feeling a bit disillusioned by it all. I can imagine if you get to that level, it's probably quite tough. Just to finish speaking about Norwich, and then we'll come on to how you got involved with Dereham and your journey with them. Just in terms of the release, obviously certain people struggle with getting released. Even now, there was a player a couple of weeks ago, wasn't there, who came out and said how much he struggled since leaving Ipswich, which was quite interesting. So it's something that happens even today. How did you find being released? Was it? I mean, you said you were quite realistic, so maybe that helped soften the blow a little bit. But
yeah,
I can imagine even being realistic, it's probably quite tough to take when you're actually told that you're probably not good enough to reach the stage that they want you to reach, even from like an ego perspective, because everyone's got one, haven't they?
Yeah, it is. And it is tough to take. But like Gus, and you just touched on there, you do have to be realistic. And, you know, it's not one of them that you don't go in one day and you get pulled into a meeting and you're told, oh, you're not being kept on. And it doesn't come as a surprise. You know, on the lead up to that for a few months or even years, you know that you're not going to get a contract. And actually, I think Norwich went through a period of time where they started offering out a 1-year contract to a few players. But I still believe that was only to fill kind of the under 21 spots and the reserves. It was never with the aim and the ambition of one of them players going on and making it as a professional. So I'm actually pleased it happened to me where that wasn't the case, where I'd done my 3-year scholarship and I was released and I could then follow my next steps in whatever my choice was at that point, which ended up being to go to university. But no, it wasn't a massive kick in the teeth. And obviously the bit I missed was being at the football club. What it's an amazing job. Let's be honest, until you then go into the real world and have to work, you don't realise how lucky you were. You turn up and you train. And if you're at the top of your game, it's amazing. But on the flip side of that, if you're not playing well, you're not liked, you're not well respected, it can be really tough. And we saw that throughout the football club when we were there. But I chose, and I'm really grateful for my parents for this. As part of my contract and my scholarship, it was built in about my education. And although the education isn't a priority at the time, I went to the City College one day a week and done my qualifications, which was enough to then get me to university, and obviously do my sports science degree, which led to me being a teacher. But no, it wasn't a shock. And then I started thinking about, do I get trials? Do I try and still follow my career in football? But I then went to a trials day, and I got picked up. I got asked for a trial by Team Bath at the time. And it was me and Nikki, who I'm obviously very good friends with as well, Nikki Howe. And we went to Bath, and I got offered a contract at Bath. And as part of that agreement, I got offered to do a degree which would be paid for from Bath University, which was an amazing opportunity. So I went down there, and I stayed down there in some digs for about 6 or 7 weeks. And I was playing football at the same time, and then started my studies. But it just wasn't for me. And the football wasn't the same as what I'd been used to. The money wasn't enough to live in Bath, which was an expensive place to live. So although my education was being covered, it still meant that I was going to be getting into debt as a result of it. And I just couldn't see myself following a career in football at that point. So obviously very close to my family back home. So I made the decision to leave Bath, and they transferred my fees across to the UEA. And I continued with my degree there, which was tough for the first year as well. I remember that really clearly. I had to work so much harder than everyone else because they'd obviously gone and done A levels, and I'd gone and done a BTEC diploma at City College, and where it wasn't a priority. So I had a lot of catch up to do. And I out of my whole life, that year was probably the year I've had to work hardest. And I knew that was so important for me in order to then have the career and work that I've had as a result of that.
So did you know when you started that sports science degree, was it always with the aim of becoming a teacher? Is that an ambition that sort of came up later down the line? Did you fall into it? How did that come about?
Yeah, I did. I fell into it. I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. Sport was my passion. So it made sense. I was doing a sports science degree at Bath, so it just meant I could continue the same course. Although I'd only been on it for a couple of months, it meant I could continue in Norwich. So in my second year then, they start talking to you about career choices and pathways. And at the time, they offered a placement. So I went and done a placement with my cousin's husband, and he worked at Cliff Park in Galston. And I worked with him and shadowed him as a PE teacher. From that point on, I thought, yeah, do you know what? This is what I want. And I then finished my degree and went and done my teacher training course at the UEA as well. And then got a job in Lowestoft at Kirkley, and now I work at Ormiston Victory Academy in Costy.
Yeah, it's. I'll probably come back to the teaching stuff because I'm interested to hear if there's any similarities between your day job and coaching. But we'll come back to that. You joined Dereham 2005-06 under Robert Taylor.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Why did you decide to join Dereham when you did?
Okay, so I wasn't massively big in I didn't know about local football really. I think I knew about Norwich United. My brother played for Norwich United, but I didn't know many of the other clubs. I didn't take a massive interest for whatever reason at that point. But I'd gone off to Bath, and then I'd come back, and I remember I obviously wanted to continue playing at some level. And it was Gary Butcher who contacted me, and he was either friends or he was working with Rob Taylor at Dereham at the time. And I knew Gary because he was a coach at the academy. And Gary called me, and he called Nikki Howell as well, and said, do you want to come over and have a look? And I'll be honest, I had no idea about the level of the standard. They were obviously furlough none at the time, but they weren't like you think of Dereham now. If they were in the furlough none, they'd be at the top of a furlough none, and obviously with us now in the East Women League. But at the time, Dereham, it wasn't the case for Dereham. Dereham had a fantastic setup, a fantastic pitch. It was obviously had the new build as well. And I remember us going up there, and we were really impressed by by the facilities. And we knew Gary, obviously Rob at the time. We knew of Rob Taylor because he'd had a good career in the game. Sorry, Arlo. Apologies, I did tell you this would happen. Yeah, he had a good career. And we went there, and I said to Nix, we need to play. We want to play. Let's play a few friendlies and see what it's all about. And we quickly settled in, and we enjoyed. We loved the club. We loved everything about it, and we ended up obviously signing for the season. I signed a contract. Me and Nix did, and it really helped the club to go to that next level, because we managed to bring in a few who we knew as well, and took Dereham really from. I remember sitting in front of Rob Taylor, and he was trying to sell the club to me. And I said, where are we? What's our ambition this season? And he said, yeah, we could get amongst the top. And then I went and spoke to someone else, and they're like, you need to stay up. That's where you're at. You need to stay up this season. So I was like, wow, I don't know the level really, but we'll do our best. And from there, yeah, but I fell in love with the club really and loved everything about it, which I ended up staying for over 10 years, I believe.
Absolutely, and in your first season, there was a Norfolk Senior Cup win as well, which must have been a nice way to mark, I guess, your arrival at Dereham, I suppose. And it's interesting that you said about falling in love with the club, because Gus said something very similar, and I want to come on and give you the right of reply to the story that he spoke about a couple of weeks ago about you essentially signing him on a lad's holiday, but we'll come back to that. In terms of loving the club, what is it that made you fall in love with Dereham? Was it the values? Was it the people? What was it, if you had to sort of quantify it, I suppose?
It's a really good question. I think it's the people. It was the people, and a lot of them people now, which is why I was so chuffed to come back to the club. A lot of them people are still about. The fans who come and watch week in, week out, and we were really well respected, and everyone appreciated that. Actually, we made the decision at that time to come and sign for Dereham when, before we signed that contract. Obviously, the word got around, but we were training with Dereham. And we had plenty of options to obviously go and sign for other clubs. But I think people really respected the fact that we were just happy to play football. We weren't negotiating contracts and wanting more money. We just wanted to play, and we wanted to play at a club that had good facilities. And that's such a draw, today as well. Players, we're a step above the rest locally in terms of our facilities and our pitch and everything else. And that was a draw to me at the time. I just wanted to play football, enjoy football. And I was really well respected as part of that.
You mentioned your brother. He joined you as well. Gus, of course, joined you. Others as well that you mentioned. So not only did Dereham get a good defender joining them, they also got a head of recruitment. That's what it sounds like. Yeah,
we managed. We moulded that team in a way. And I know you spoke to Gus about last week about when we actually took over for a little while, and Gus took over. And the amount of players that we had an influence on getting to the football club and then going on and being successful it was incredible really. And we ended up having a team of friends again and enjoyed playing together. And like we know, that brings success in itself.
Absolutely. And in terms of what Gus said about you signing him on a lad's holiday, I thought I'd issue you the right of reply on that. Talk to us about your perspective about that holiday.
Yeah, I don't remember much from a holiday, I'll be honest.
I'm not surprised.
But yeah, we did. I think we went to Magaluf, and he'd been released from the academy, and he was talking about Kings Lynn and different clubs, and he trained with Kings Lynn for a little while. But yeah, I was just in his ear the whole time about signing for Dereham, and I told him how good the club was and how much he'd enjoy it. Because when you leave the academy, that's that period of time when you're like, what am I going to do? Do I want to play football? And a lot actually stop at that point. A lot then don't actually even continue with local football. They've had enough of football, the pressures of football, and it's kind of ruling your life for a bit. But so I was very conscious that Gus needed to come and play and enjoy football for a period of time. And the same happened to him. We got him across, and that's the big thing. Once you get someone there, you can then work on them and they see what it's all about. And that's what happened. It happened for a number of players as well on top of that.
That's how you know that the football club has such an important role to play, isn't it? When you can get people and convince them to stay. Just in terms of your playing days, before we move on to the coaching side of things and maybe how you got involved in that, highlight of your Dereham spell. I mean, you said there you spent over 10 years with the club, winning the title. Was it moving up to the Ryman League? What is maybe your best memory as a player?
Yeah, I think it's becoming captain of a football club. That was a proud moment and a real honour, and I don't think people can underestimate that. People laugh at it and say, "Oh, come on, get over yourself. It's local football." But it's a real, it's a real responsibility, and something we took seriously and enjoyed. And then going on to obviously win the league that season and taking Dereham to that next level was a massive achievement. Yeah, and then at that point, like Gus said, it was great then establishing ourselves in that next league. But obviously, then my time came where I didn't want to continue with that for a number of reasons.
Did you have an ambition? Did you have an opportunity to go higher up the ladder at any point, or was it always kind of one focus in terms of Dereham? And as a secondary question, when you did win the title, how big a shift was that maybe from the club you joined to the club you were with at then? How many sort of strides forward did it take?
Okay. So I had a few offers. I know once I've been at Dereham for a couple of seasons and had a couple of really good seasons playing, I had the opportunity to speak to King's Lynn. But again, it didn't interest me. I was settled. I was doing my degree. That was taking a lot of time, and I had no ambition really to then go and travel a little bit more, earn a tiny little bit more money. It just didn't bother me, and I was settled, and I enjoyed my football. I remember one year I went and met Damien Hilton. To discuss the opportunity of maybe going across to Norwich United, because they had a really strong team at that point. They'd some really good players, and it was a stage where Dereham hadn't quite progressed from being an average team in that league to being a very good team in that league. And I was thinking, do you know what? We're not progressing as quickly as I like here. And I went and spoke to Damien Hilton about going to Norwich United because they were favourites to win the league. And I thought, I could buy into that and I could be part of that and maybe go to the next level with a club that has got that ambition. But I knew as soon as I left that meeting with Damien Hilton, but it was never going to happen. I was set at Dereham, and from then on, I had the mindset of taking Dereham to that next level and playing my part in that, which obviously then happened. In terms of going to that next level, it's a massive step. The step is huge. The teams you come up against are a step above the furlough none level, and every single game you play in that league, you've got the capabilities of winning or losing. You have to be on your game every single week, and that's when I go back to the importance of that consistency in order to be successful. That's so important. Technically, you come across some very good players at that level as well, but you come across good players technically at the Anglian Com level. But the step up physically at the Isthmian League is what took my kind of notice and why it's such a challenge. And you have to have that about you in order to be successful. You can't just be a technical player anymore and play at that level.
And in terms of just what you said there before about a number of reasons, maybe why your Dereham career came to an end, is that something you and you don't have to, of course, but is that something that you'd like to sort of address and expand upon?
Yeah, I'd happily talk about that. In my kind of personal life, I'd had the kids. I'd had 2 kids, and that took up a lot of time. And traveling on a Saturday to play in different areas of the country became more difficult, more challenging, especially when physically the demands of the league were far higher, and age wasn't then on my side as much. And my attributes as a footballer was always things that decrease with age. So my speed, my agility, things that made me a good player at that time, I started to find more difficult. And I was very honest with myself. I never wanted to finish my playing days with Dereham where I felt like I was struggling and hanging on. And yeah, I just didn't want to do that, which is why then the right move came for me when Nicky Howell, who joined Harleston previously, said, do you want to come and play more locally and play and enjoy your football again? And that's the decision I made at that point. I obviously didn't take that decision lightly, and I missed playing for Dereham so much. I actually went back at one point and then realised again I wasn't quite up to it, and went back to Harleston. So it was a funny time for me because I wanted to be at Dereham. I wanted to play, and I wanted to kind of impact the game and the club like I had done up to that point. And then I didn't feel like I was able to, and I was quite proud, kind of too proud to kind of go down with that, and I wanted to leave at that point.
I guess when you love a club that much, it's that old saying, isn't it? When you love something, you have to let them go and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which maybe applies to this. In terms of coaching and going into coaching, was that a road that you always knew you wanted to go down? I know Gus sort of said when that Harleston job came up, and obviously you'd assisted him when he had that brief spell in charge at 20, which is incredible, really. Was that a road that you knew that you always wanted to go down after your playing days?
I knew I always wanted to be involved in a football club. That's what I do know. And I say that to this day. When we were talking about having a third child, I almost got the contract out and said to Beck, sign this, because there's no way I'm going to stop being involved in football. It was one of them, because that is my get out. I love football. I love being involved in a team environment. And without that, and as we've experienced during lockdown, I miss it incredibly. So yeah, I knew I always wanted to be involved in football in some capacity, and I'll be one of these old guys, I imagine, when I'm 60, 70 and I'm the kit man for a local football club. I'm one of them. I just want to be in that environment. So I'm obviously being very friendly to Gus. Gus is a fantastic manager, and he was doing his qualifications, and it just worked where we kind of always said, we'll do it together. Gus brings a lot more to the table than me. I know that, but we work as a two, and I like to think that I bring a lot of qualities to the table that he acknowledges.
I should have asked Gus this last week, but in terms of him, talk to us a little bit about his style as a manager, and maybe why you complement each other quite nicely, and maybe what you offer that kind of balances that.
So first of all, he's very knowledgeable. He's a fantastic coach, and that was clear. You don't get put in charge of a football club when you're 19 if someone doesn't see something in you, and it was evident that he was always going to go on, and he had the capacity and capabilities of being really successful as a manager or a coach. I actually thought he then got involved with the academy, and I thought they want to keep him, and that obviously didn't happen, which is good for us, because that would have meant that he wouldn't have been able to manage Dereham. But yeah, the job came up at Harleston, and we spoke, and I said, I don't really want to take the lead on it. I wanted to continue playing at the time as well, but in a couple of years' time, I knew that I'd stop playing and we'd do it together. But yeah, Gus is obviously a fantastic manager. He's well respected. He knows his strengths, and he knows where he's not strong, and I think that's where we complement each other very well. And he's very reflective. He'll never ever tell anyone that he knows best. He's reflective, and he analyses games. He's a stato. He loves football, and he'll do everything in his power to get it right. And the last thing, he's a winner. I've never seen someone who cares so much about a football club, but also about winning and losing, and that's so important in order to be successful.
And what about you as a coach? How would you describe your style and maybe your approach to getting the best out of a player, or improving a player on a training pitch? How would you kind of describe your style?
I'd like to. I draw my experience as a player, particularly at our level, and I think that has helped develop players who are with us now, because you've been there, you've done it, you know the game. And when I talk about where we're not quite there yet, and I talk about reasons why we're not, in terms of gamesmanship, knowing how to win, I like to think I can draw my experience and bring that to the table, and we'll be looking to do that obviously moving forward. But I like to think I'm quite a likable character in the change room, and building that team spirit, which is so important to build that rapport in the team and on the pitch.
This is I don't want you to take offence to this question. Hopefully I word it right, but in terms of what you said earlier about your struggles with as a player adapting to this level, does that make it easier as a coach to maybe point out what you said there, maybe what you do need and the requirements you do need to play at that standard?
100%. And I think we're learning all the time the type of player that we need in order to be successful, and I always go back to it. We've got David Hinton, for example. Technically, he's nowhere near as good as other players in the team. He'll acknowledge that. But what he has got is an amazing work rate, desire. And you take him out of our team, and we struggle. And that's what the level is all about. And actually, it was funny. I was watching the Norwich against Wycombe game the other night, and first half, Norwich technically are by far the better team, but Wycombe, they made it difficult, didn't they? And there was a lot of gamesmanship, and they were fit. They were hard in the tackle. And for half a game, you know, they were in the game. And I know Norwich then went on and won the game because they had the quality, but that's really important at our level. You know, you can't just be be a really good technical player and be successful. You have to have a bit of everything, and that is where we're reflecting. That's what we're working on to try and get that real balance moving forward. And that means maybe changing the mindset of a few, or bringing a couple in who have that impact on the squad.
Final question then before we get into some questions from those lovely people that have taken their time and joined us this evening. Does being a teacher help you be a good coach? Is that are they two, because they feel like two jobs that maybe would go together quite nicely? Do you experience that in reality?
What you mean, dealing when the players have a little whinge and are upset because they lost a game and bring them back? Possibly. No, not massively. If you ask the players who I played with and now work with, they couldn't believe I'm a teacher. And when I talk about it being my release, it's, you know, you can be yourself. You know, in work, you have to be someone. The expectations are you obviously meet the requirements of that job. And the weekend for me and my Saturday and on the bus and in the change room, I like to think that I relax and you can be yourself a little bit more. And I think that's really, really important.
Right, a few questions then from our viewers. Greg Bell, to kick things off, has said, does Ollie agree with Gus that Champions League in 12 years is achievable?
What did Gus say? 13. I sat there thinking 10 at the time. 10.
So 12's probably about right then to get the balance.
Yeah, if we go with balance, I think we can get there. But be patient. That's the key word.
Yeah, absolutely. Alfred Barnard has said, is it right that you're going to launch your own range of male grooming products?
Cheers, Alfred. I'm not sure I've got the hairdo to do that anymore. If you go back to my playing days when I used to have the beard and the Craig David stripes, then possibly. But no, I'm going to disappoint you on that one. Not anymore.
There'll be a nice picture, I think, probably on Dereham's Twitter account of Ollie when he was younger at Norwich with that Craig David style beard that he talks about there. Peter Dugdale, are you going to grace us with your fullback skills next season? Of course, you are. Even though we've spoken about your playing career, you still do get named on the bench. You've come on in occasion. There's obviously this clamour from supporters to see you on the pitch. Is that something that you enjoy, I suppose, even now? Is it that willingness to play and, like you said, that enthusiasm to be involved with the game which sees you on the bench, or is it a case of necessity sometimes?
A bit of both. I enjoy it, and I'm always happy to be named on the bench to fill the subs bench. In terms of getting on, you never rule it out. I'd love, I miss playing more than anyone, but obviously I've got other commitments now, and it's not the right thing to do, and I wouldn't physically be able to do it. But no, we always have a laugh when I take my shirt out on the bench. It's a bit of a crack. But we might see the return of Willis one day.
There you go. He's not completely written it off. Last one then from Peter as well, who you may have seen him ask this. It was a very good question last week to Gus about a possible new league structure. He's just interested on your thoughts as as well. It's about moving sideways and that sort of thing.
It's something we're talking about, and something we need to look into and decide as a club, will it benefit us? I strongly believe the standard in the other league would be easier for us and we could potentially be more successful on the pitch, but it needs to be right for the club, and it's a decision we're all going to have to contribute to and make that call. But we don't know yet. We're waiting on further guidance before we then have to look into that in more detail, but it'd be definitely something we're open to considering.
Finally, from me, we see management teams kind of move around a lot, both in professional football and non-league football. And Gus obviously came on last week and said that maybe the burning desire to move up the leagues and become maybe a professional football manager isn't certainly on his to-do list. Do you envisage ever possibly stepping out on your own without Gus becoming a manager elsewhere, or do you think it will always be you two as a duo?
I think it'll always be us too. No, I'm happy with the role that I played, if I'm completely honest, and it compensates my whole life really well. And Gus takes the lead on it, and I back him with that. So no, I don't have that ambition to go off by myself. But we also, people talk about people getting comfortable. We know it's a real honour to be in charge of Dereham Town, and we know that if we don't do our job, our job at Dereham isn't a given, and we like to think of it like that. We're responsible for the club and the progression of the club, and if we don't do it, we know what football's like. So it keeps us on our toes, and we're grateful for our opportunity, obviously, and the job that we do have.
Is there a good cop, bad cop scenario with you and Gus? And if so, who plays what role?
Gus is the bad cop, really, especially if it goes badly and I'm standing next to him and I get bits of spit coming out of his mouth. That's not particularly pleasant. But yeah, he gets angry at times, and I'm the one who might go and put my arm around someone's shoulder and say, "Come on," because yeah, for me as a player, that gave me that was better for me than someone having to go at me and shouting at me. So I think, again, it's knowing people's personalities and what works for them. And again, I'd like to think that I contribute that in a really positive way in the change room.
I know we joke about the good cop, bad cop stuff, but I guess that shows how nicely you complement each other, isn't it? Because you've got that mixed approach, and maybe those two different messages, I suppose, but both work with different kind of in different kind of ways. So that's
yeah, I'm sure referees would say otherwise, by the way, but yeah, I'm less of a shouter than Gus.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when you do go though, don't you? I mean, how many yellow cards do you think you've amassed now?
Oh, they were undeserved, though, weren't they? They weren't my fault.
Never are.
Nah.
Olly, thank you very much for joining us. Really enjoyed that. We'll be back at some point in a week or two with someone else on. Thank you all very much for watching. Of course, if you've joined us halfway through or just as we end this chat, then this video will be available on Dereham Town's YouTube channel as well for you to watch in full later on. And it was a cracking one. Really glad that we got to sit down and speak to Olly, and we'll continue to do these until, as we spoke about, normality is restored and we can all get back to Oldest Park. I hope you're all staying safe out there. Fingers crossed we can get back to football soon. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.